Hey, hi, hello, welcome. This is Derek Sings Poorly in Person. I am the titular Derek, and I am usually drawn poorly, but this is still the channel for theater kids of all ages and the people who tolerate them. Now, these live bonus episodes are to fill in the space in between the longer production times required for the hand-drawn episodes, even though it may not look like it. It does take quite a bit of effort to put those together, and so they can't always be as timely as one might like. So some things have happened since the recording and scripting of those that I sometimes will want to touch on, or just things that'll be easier to kind of showcase in live action. So what I want to touch on here today is actually related to my first video on Zoom Theater. And at the time that I wrote that, there wasn't actually a lot of live performance going on in any medium. But now we've had some more examples of live entertainment being presented remotely. Mostly in the sports field, we've also had award shows, and some theater has come back in a remote access sort of way. So I wanted to return to the topic really briefly to touch on what we can learn from what has happened moving forward. And actually, I want to use the example of one of my other favorite things besides theater, which is wrestling. If you didn't know, World Wrestling Entertainment started something called the Thunderdome, which I actually think theater can learn some lessons from. So what has happened with the Thunderdome is that the wrestling is happening in the ring. Live action wrestling, and I think wrestling and theater are very closely related, more than wrestling is obviously related to real sport. So that's why I'm using it as the example more so than I would for, say, how football or basketball have been handling this. So the wrestling is happening in a ring, as it does, and there are rows upon rows of video screens. They've actually attempted to tier the screens, so there's some sense of depth. It doesn't really come across that way, but they tried to do it. But what's happening is that the audience is seeing a special live feed from the event, different than what the audience at home is watching. So if you are a member of this virtual audience, you're getting some additional things that the home crowd doesn't see. And then in return, you are broadcasting yourself on this virtual screen. So in theory, what's supposed to happen is that you should be seeing and hearing some reaction from this virtual crowd to the action happening inside the ring. And this interplay between performer and crowd is a crucial part of wrestling, much like it is in true theater. So what we're finding is that latency really is the killer. There's just too much lag time between when the action happens inside the ring and when the audience reacts to it, especially if they get to what's called a promo, which is when the athletic portion stops and character work begins. Usually you would have a lot more interaction between the character and the audience, and that just isn't really able to happen in an organic way with this virtual crowd. So what they're actually doing on the WWE is they're piping in or what's called sweetening canned crowd noise to augment that. You're really hearing little of the audience itself, but what's really happening is you're hearing just the generic noises that they have on production library. The same noises that they would use for their video games, pretty much. So what can theater learn from that if we're broadcasting live from a stage, or if we're broadcasting through Zoom as a medium? It can help to have a few safe audience members. They're spaced out, maybe just crew members, understudies, someone there making some noise to help guide the action along. Think of laugh tracks, the canned laughter from old sitcoms. That was there for a reason, because we like to be part of the crowd. We like to be part of a group reaction, so we laugh less when we're just by ourselves watching a show than when we can hear others laughing with us. So having some sort of trigger triggering sound, organic triggering sound preferably, whatever reaction needs to be done to that show, you should really try and get some of that on the track. So extra people whose only position there is to be your surrogate audience. And everyone that will help your actors, because they'll be hearing at least some sort of reaction in more real time, and also it'll help your audience have a more of a communal feeling as they're watching. And really quick, the other thing that we learned from the Thunderdome is that if you give an audience the opportunity, they will ruin your show because they're bored on their computer. There's been some very offensive imagery posted on some people's screens. Now, I think with theater that should be less of an issue, but it is just something to keep in mind if you are doing some sort of audience interaction as part of your online theater experience. So those are just some things that I thought about ever since that first episode that I wanted to get out there into the ether, and to also introduce my love of wrestling into this channel, because it'll come up eventually, so might as well just get it. Rip the band-aid off, guys. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We do have more episodes coming up very soon. We're going to be getting into our audition series here, and if you like these live action ones and want more of this, please comment down there and say, hey, we like seeing your face and you're a cool guy, and we don't mind your Jeff Goldblum manner of speaking, and it's okay to be on camera more. So again, thank you so much, and peace and all good.